Hello friends. Do you ever go on vacation or just a photo outing or like a casual, midweek photo taking session? Right now I'm over at my parents' house. I was helping out with some stuff and I have a camera with me, of course, and I was taking photos of the dog, my hairy brother. And do you ever have those times and then you get home and you just jump right back into real life and you never really take the time with those photos that you captured? Even if you were excited about them because you were in, some cool place for vacation, you just never quite find the time. I do. And I know Raymond does as well, and we will actually hear from him later in this video, but right now we're going to talk about me. Editing is my least favorite part of the photography process. I love to capture the photos. I love to plan the whole outing, I love to pick out my gear. I love to capture the photos, obviously. But if I could skip over the editing part and go right to the sharing the photos on social media or printing them out and hanging them up, man, I would just, if I could just magically make that happen, I would do that. But I can't. So anytime I can make my editing process more efficient, I am all about it because it means that I will edit more photos and actually enjoy my photos. And that's kind of, half the point of photography, at least, is to enjoy your photos. So that's why the sponsor of today's video came at kind of the perfect time as I've been thinking about this topic of how do I make my whole process more efficient? Because I do want to edit more of my photos. I have way too many that I haven't edited. So the sponsor of today's video is Loupedeck, and I will talk about them more in this video, but right now I wanted to talk to you about the backstory.
It was hot out there. So if you have followed Raymond and I on this channel, you'll know that we've been working our way through a series of videos in the last couple months on gear options for beginner photographers. And as a part of that, I've been going back through our archives of photos to pull images captured with different setups that we've used in the last 10 years or so to show as examples in the videos. And I've been discovering photos that I had completely forgotten about. And I can't believe that I just have put them on our hard drives and backed them up to a couple different places and let them sit. So when Loupedeck contacted us recently about trying their new device, the Loupedeck Live, which helps to streamline photo and video editing, among other things, it just seemed like good timing. I've worked with Loupedeck before, so I trusted that this newer product would be useful and high quality, so we said to send it. But before we jump into this, in this video, Raymond and I will be showing you how each of us have incorporated this new Loupedeck Live into our respective workflows for photo and video editing, along with a few other surprising purposes. And if it looks like something that you would use, I will have a link in the description for you to learn more about it. It has certainly helped Raymond and I, so it very well may help you too. I always share what I'm excited about, especially when it's a new piece of photo equipment, but I don't want this idea of enjoying the finished product of your hard work with your camera to get lost. I'm hoping that this video will motivate you to edit and enjoy more of your art. And with that said, let me tell you about the sponsor of this video, Loupedeck, and the Loupedeck Live that I have. This is the commercial part of the video, but just in case you're new here, I only take sponsorships from companies and gear that I actually get excited about. So I hope you get excited with me because this is actually pretty cool.
The Loupedeck Live is a compact and powerful console that is an extension of what you do with your keyboard and mouse or your graphic tablet and pen, with the goal of efficiency in whatever you're doing. You're able to customize this to your specific needs. It's a chameleon when it comes to helping you out in creative ways with your art, but also with your other endeavors at your computer. Now, you may remember that we have experience with an earlier Loupedeck product, the Loupedeck Plus, which is larger and all about giving you control over virtually everything when it comes to photo editing in Lightroom Classic. I typically use Lightroom Classic, but because I travel around the Southwest quite a bit, I have to carry my entire photography and editing workflow with me. So this keyboard-sized piece of gear, regrettably, fell out of my normal workflow, even though I enjoy using it. The newer Loupedeck Live does all of the stuff that this Loupedeck Plus does and more, and it's in a smaller package. It's quite easy to drop into my bag, so this is where I started getting excited about it. I'll show you how I have been editing photos in Adobe Lightroom Classic in just a moment, but you can also edit in Adobe Photoshop. You can edit video in Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe After Effects, and Final Cut Pro 10, which I've been doing. It also works in Adobe Illustrator CC and Adobe Audition. You can use it with Streamlabs, Twitch, Spotify, and it provides operation system control. And that list only scratches the surface of what this will do. Raymond will talk about how he has utilized the console later in this video. And you know how I said it's a chameleon? When you change between applications, the Loupedeck Live changes its appearance and behavior to become useful for the application that you have up on your screen. It switches from one to another as fast as you can. I am pretty impulsive when I'm working. I often have Lightroom Classic and Final Cut Pro open at the same time, working both of them in putting together a YouTube video. And you can see that the labels on the buttons and the dials all change with me as I move through applications, like from Lightroom here to now I switch to Final Cut Pro. So my workflow is seamless. And I'm impressed with how useful this little console can be for so many different purposes. But now I want to share how I customize the controls for my Lightroom Classic workflow, and I'll show you what the experience is like using it. But first, a quick backstory on the photos I'll be editing. Last summer, Raymond and I did a project in San Francisco. We actually took a train there, which was really interesting, but we had a second portion of that trip that was more of a vacation for us. And of course, we took our cameras with us and we used them, and I've shared a few of the photos here and there. I know that I absolutely loved some of the photos I captured, but I did not spend the time with them to really select and edit them to enjoy them or to print them and hang in my home. It's a shame because this portion of the trip impacted me deeply and I was so in love with my surroundings, and the photos have just been sitting mostly unseen for about a year. So that's what you and I are doing right now. We are unearthing them with the intention of printing a few so that I can relive my experience every time I look at them. On the Loupedeck Live, you can see that there are both touch-sensitive buttons and dials, plus these number buttons on the bottom that take you to additional pages of controls. When you open the software like Lightroom Classic, there is already a set of controls programmed on each page, and it's all very intuitive, but you can also customize everything however you want, as often as you want, so this can change with you as your preferences change. I know mine do from time to time, so I'm glad that I'm not stuck with one configuration. When I customized this page, I added my most used adjustments for landscape images. I plan to make pages for other types of photos too, like one for portraits and one for monochrome images, so I'll only need to press one of the number buttons and I'll be switched to the set of adjustments that I use most often for that type of photo. For landscapes, like I'm editing today, you can see the adjustments I use the most often, like dehaze and exposure, and you can see in Lightroom that when I turn this exposure dial, my exposure slider moves left and right. And then I can press that dial in like a button and it resets the exposure adjustment to 0. It's so convenient. And for the touch-sensitive buttons here, I added one that takes me to cropping and straightening, one that activates masking, and another that copies all settings, plus one that pastes all settings. And you can see that when I press one of these buttons, like the crop overlay, it changes the functions of my buttons and dials yet again to allow me to make my cropping and straightening adjustments. Okay, let's edit. This was my first time this far north in California, and I absolutely fell in love. Here's a photo I am very excited to work with. I definitely want to enhance the colors with vibrance and saturation and lighten the shadows quite a bit. I often like to use dehaze with landscapes, but this scene already has a lot of contrast and clarity, and I don't want the image to end up looking harsh, so I'm going to leave it here. I love how the foamy ocean and the cloudy sky mirror each other here and how vibrant the colors are. Moving to a photo that I edited as I was getting used to the Loupedeck Live. This is an example where I used the console and my mouse to make adjustments. I edited using my typical adjustments on the console, dehaze and shadows and colors, and I did some selective editing here as well. I pressed this button on the console to activate my masking tools, and I brushed on a mask using my mouse. And this image looks like it should be edited similarly to the first photo I showed you. So I'm going to start with a copy and paste of my settings and go from there. The ocean with the gigantic rocks fading into the mist were astounding to me. I could have sat on the beach, the wind whipping around me, and watched how the water crashed up against those rocks all day. Raymond and I also visited Redwood State and National Parks on this trip, so I'll speed through some edits of a few of these. I was again astounded by this place. When I imagined these redwood trees, I imagined them to be, about the same size as the largest ponderosa pines that I see in northern Arizona. But no, these old growth forests are something else entirely. I just kept saying, oh my word. The surroundings were so lush and green. I just wanted to bathe in it. I wanted to wander into the ferns and curl up under one of the trees. But unfortunately, that's discouraged in protected spaces like these. You may notice that I'm using the Loupedeck with my left hand while I'm using my mouse with my right hand. I found that to be the most efficient for me. I'm using both hands to edit, whereas before I was only using my mouse and my right hand. And one of the unexpected reasons I find myself using the Loupedeck Live is that I'm starting to get some carpal tunnel or something in my right wrist, so it's really nice to give that wrist a break by utilizing my left hand more. And now that I have finally edited a bunch of these images, I am able to see which ones I really like, and I can print a few out for hanging. This is why I'm excited about this console. I've talked to you all before about disrupting my artistic process by using different gear or going different places, thinking about different things while I'm using my camera, things like that. I seek that out because it helps the creative side of me to stay fresh. And the Loupedeck Live has certainly done that, but like I said, it's also making my editing process more efficient. So I'm printing photos that I love that would have otherwise sat unedited and unseen on my hard drives. Of course, Raymond and I are sharing custody of this new device, and while I've been focusing on Lightroom and how I can streamline my process there, Raymond has actually gone into some of the other ways that we can use the console. So let's go find him and ask him what he's learned. I think he's in his office. Raymond, we've come to learn from you. What have you been doing with the Loupedeck Live?
What I've been doing is I've been seeing how I can incorporate Loupedeck Live into my daily use of my computers here. I've used it with Final Cut Pro, with Photoshop, Audacity, Lightroom, and even some games. And I'm pleased to say it's worked great. Now, one thing that's very important to me, and this is make or break on anything that I control a computer with, is I have to be drawn to it from a tactile, clicky perspective. I'm very picky about what keyboards I can use. If it's not the right keyboard, I don't want to type. So for me, one of the big tests of the Loupedeck Live is my hand drawn to it? Is it the right size? Do the buttons and dials feel right? And I'm happy to say, after using it quite a bit, it passes that test. I can't quantify that. It's just an experience. It's a feeling that I have when I'm using something. The other thing that I'm picky about is customization. I don't always agree with the way that things are laid out on a device like this by default. And I'm happy again to say that when I went into the software to configure it, I was impressed that you can basically set any button or dial to do any function, whether it's native to the software or some keyboard macro or shortcut that you dream up on the fly. It's all configurable like that. So it passes the usability test for me, and it passes the configuration test. In the case of Final Cut Pro, Loupedeck Live already knows what to do, so it was really just a matter of using the software to reconfigure the layouts for how I like to work. I like to edit quickly, and I'm less creative overall than Leigh is, so my designs were all about optimizing my own speed while editing, and the Loupedeck Live let me do that no problem. For example, here in Audacity, I also like to work quickly with our audio. And one thing you'll notice here on the edit menu is that there are hotkey combinations that you can use to get to the various items quickly. But here on the effects menu, I had to be more creative because you do not see hotkey combinations. So first, in Audacity, I used its ability to add keyboard shortcuts for individual items. And then in the Loupedeck software, I was able to create macros with those new shortcuts, stringing a few of my favorite custom hotkey sequences together. I'm able to assign text descriptions to buttons on the Loupedeck Live, and then I'm navigating Audacity or really any app or game with speed and style. Don't get me wrong, you can certainly get around various apps with a keyboard and mouse, as we all have, but if there's something that I can do up front to save time and give myself an easy-to-use visual layout with the buttons arranged the way that I want them, that is something that I'm going to do. Creativity is not limited to still and moving images. The free Loupedeck Marketplace has downloadable profiles for Excel, many other creative apps, even Visual Studio for those doing software development. The bottom line is that if it's something you can do with your keyboard and mouse, it's very likely something that can be automated and simplified with Loupedeck Live. And as Leigh mentioned earlier, when you switch from application to application, the Loupedeck Live profile changes along with you.
Raymond reminded me of another thing that I liked, and that's that I have used that console as a number pad when I was doing bookkeeping. And I realized that there are keyboards with number pads or external number pads. You wouldn't necessarily purchase this solely to be used as a number pad, but my point here is that the Loupedeck Live can serve a whole slew of purposes for me, which I love. I love efficiency. So it's quickly become a must-have tool on my desk. And the problem is that we only have one of them. So Raymond and I have to share, like I said, but in practical terms, that means that we'll be stealing it from each other's desk when the other one isn't looking. But that's all we have today. So I will add a link to the Loupedeck Live in the description of this video so that you can learn more about it if you're interested, but definitely let us know if you have any questions. Thank you again to Loupedeck for sponsoring this project and for helping me to streamline my workflow. And thank you for watching.